On the 22nd of May 2005. Welcome to staff, elected members, members of this committee and other councillors who've come along. Thank you. So I will, I'll say our council blessing. As we deliberate on the issues before us, we trust that we will reflect positively on the communities we serve. Let us all seek to be effective and just, so that with courage, vision and energy, we provide positive leadership in a spirit of harmony and compassion. So now we'll move on to apologies. So we have apologies from Councillors Coe, Mr Tim Sutton and Hirawai Paki, and on Zoom we have Michael Moore, Councillor Sophie Hanford and Kim Tahiwi. And I think that's about it. So
Madam
item 4,
Madam Chair,
and
we
I
also
have,
have
yes,
the Mayor.
and the Mayor, yes, apologies from the Mayor.
Noting that she's a leave of absence.
Yes, so she's on a leave of absence. So can I have a mover for those? Thank you, Councillor Warwick. Seconder? Thank you. All those in favour? Passed, thank you. So now we'll move on to item 4, which is declarations of interest relating to items on the agenda. I haven't been notified of any, but does anyone have any last minute thank you. No declarations of interest. So now we move on to public speaking time for items relating to the agenda. So I have no notifications of members of the public, but I have a statement here to read out from Quentin Poole. I think this was circulated to, I'm not sure if it's all elected members or whether it was all councillors. Hi Jocelyn, after reading item 8.1 and appendix 1 of the agenda for the meeting scheduled today, I have some major concerns about 1, the underlying philosophy of inclusion zoning. 2, the market-led response of inclusion zoning is continued in any form. Philosophy of inclusionary zoning is essentially a Marxist communist play. The council expects the proletariat, developers, landowners, builders to build affordable units at council direction plan plus legal constraints on titles. The council will determine and control the future sale of an affordable unit is preserved using legal tools. The council, through its housing CCO, will determine who occupies the affordable unit. Social housing is part of the central government. KCDC should concentrate fully on what is required to do under LGA 2002. Market-led response could be, would be a further decline in housing stock growth in Kapiti. Developers, landowners, builders will be unwilling to subsidise the construction of affordable units and will move their operations to another part of the country. Less group and an exacerbated lack of housing stock will result. On page 4, option 4, on page 14, option 4 should have been included. This can be introduced by way of amendment and then debated. So I'll read it out now, but then I'll pass it over to staff. And maybe, actually I don't know how we're going to manage this, but I think you actually will have it. Yeah, so anyway, option 4, mere reset of regulatory conditions. Benefits, no additional resourcing required, will reduce costs to developers, landowners, builders, avoids complexity of policy development, no risk of reducing supply of housing. So that is the end of his statement. So normally when we have a public speaking time, we're able to ask questions of the submitter. Are there any questions or any comments relating to this? Councillor Warwick.
Can we have that in hard copy to have a look at? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. So hard copy will be circulated and then when this paper comes up, you'll have that information in front of you, and then we can feed it into our discussion. Thank you. Right, so now we'll move on to item 6, which is deputation. So I am very, very pleased to welcome Lee Ramsey from Energise Otaki to come up and speak to us about the work that they have been doing. So welcome, Lee. You're going to come and sit up here? Yep. Okay, yes, yep.
Kia ora everyone. Lee Ramsey, Chairman, Energise Otaki Charitable Trust. Thanks so much for the opportunity to update and present to faces I haven't seen before. Obviously, we're quite well supported by KCDC and councillors within and other community interests, and so it's really good just to give you a broad overview of where we're at, potentially answer any questions I might be able to answer on specifics. But yeah, I would say that without council support, we wouldn't be functioning, and I would say in these times, it's precarious for any sort of charitable trust trying to keep its funding going when it's got so many outgoings. So again, thanks to the council support. So there is some good news though. You know, we're our key focus is around energy and how it relates to community and the environment, with a main focus on citizens and how that relates to energy and then an overlap into business. So we talk about good energy for everyone. We've got sort of 4 main focus areas, and they all interact. I mean, energy provides humans their whole way of life, and without it, we're doomed. So whether it's fossil fuels, renewable energy, climate-related issues, temperature change, all of that, it's all related directly to energy. So that's our overarching thing. Although we dabble in all different areas, the focus is to keep in mind energy. So, energy access. So one of our flagship community projects for the citizens of Otaki, but also wider afield, the project has extended out, and we're always getting demands to stretch, which is challenging. But we've managed to offer a project we call Warm Up Otaki, and it's sort of morphed through various funding sort of options from ECA stuff, from KCDC stuff, and other sort of little snippets of things, and obviously donations, which have actually really helped with some specific projects. So we offer free advice, home energy efficiency assessments. That's morphing a little bit now because Matt, who's out of focus in that picture, is heading to Samoa on an environmental project with his partner and family. So we have someone that isn't fully qualified to do the actual home assessments standards, but we're going to meld that in with a new arrangement. But it really has worked out quite well. Certain things we've found is that actually all the whiz-bang stuff you can offer is all good and well, but if you can't get into the homes, if you can't get the interaction with the community members, it's all just, you know, hyperbole really. So that's one big thing we've found, is actually breaking into people's environments with respect and interacting with them on their needs, and that they, there's the landlord issue, there's all these other complex things, and there's the modesty factor, but this is something we've learned over the sort of 4 years we've been doing it. And we also offer a pay it forward scheme, which is sort of, without giving all the details, because I'm not super close to it, is that people can actually put money into a pot to help people that can't help themselves. So you can see all that on our very flash website. We also offer a business energy service, which we launched, where we had the Prime Minister at the time attend, but he couldn't attend because he had COVID. but again, it's acting like businesses are big users of energy. There's a huge amounts of waste, and we try and offer sort of entry-level assessments about, with technical assessments around, changing your lighting to LEDs. Well, we've got again on our website, we've sort of got a tick box thing people can go through, and then we can look at their energy needs and if we can do any obvious stuff, because the first thing you do with trying to move away from energy use or shift your energy use is firstly stop wasting it. No point in putting $5,000, $10,000 worth of solar panels on your roof if you haven't got insulation in your roof, for example. So we're about energy efficiency, reducing energy, to then make smarter decisions. So yeah, that's gone modestly well. We've sort of done maybe a dozen or so audits, and a couple of people we've referred people on to more specialised energy assessments and certified people to do that. Energy recovery. So Energise Otaki was the first to run repair cafes in the district. Actually much wider as well, Wellington, etc. And it's a great way of community getting together and using the skills that everyone has to help with all that sort of, fixing things, sharpening knives, electronics, which is a big one, probably e-waste, broadly speaking, whether it's bigger appliances or some of the more technical stuff. We have a group of, it's all volunteers. We may have the ability to pay for electrical certification. Once you do a repair of electrical appliance, it needs to be checked by a certified person. So those sort of people are hard to sort of drag out of the community because they're probably working on it sort of 7 days a week in their day job. But we've found it really, really good for community interaction and fun, which is quite good. And all this right to repair stuff, all of that, we've been instrumental in pushing some of that, and we can see all that's heading our way. So yeah, really, really good fun, that one. Yeah, Kaipower Otaki. So this is about taking food waste that would otherwise not be used for, well, firstly, eating. Secondly, maybe for feeding to animals, things like that. It's sort of the bottom of the barrel or the bottom of the bin, and doing anaerobic digestion, which is basically producing renewable natural gas. And we've been working with some of the biggest stakeholders because, as you may know, we are running out of gas. It's a finite resource, and I think this year, if you listen to all the murmurings, which is my day job, we're in the shit again. And so renewable biogas from organic matter breaking down. So we received some funding from KCDC actually under the Waste Levy grants to set up a small biogas digester, which is at Otaki College, and council staff have been to have a look at our progress there. Unfortunately, we had a business stakeholder withdraw at the last moment, which made things a little bit more of a struggle for our volunteers to make happen. But yeah, that shows at a small scale what you can do in a small community. And there's obviously bigger companies doing it, like EcoGas up in Rekaroa. Unfortunately, with the government shifting the mandate of having to do food waste scraps, that could be a little bit in that sort of business model of putting larger biogas systems in of that commercial scale that would feed into the main reticulated grid is slightly doomed. But anyway, that's the big picture. The small picture is communities can do it themselves if they want and provide gas for cooking or so on. So again, we'll keep pushing through because there's a lot to talk about. So climate energy, and obviously I was asked to speak here in relation to the climate and so on. The committee's here today, but again, our focus is on energy, and if you improve energy efficiency, you reduce CO2. So that's our approach. And if you improve energy efficiency in your house, you reduce costs and CO2. It all links. So again, reducing the inherent carbon content of bikes is a strong focus. We've got a really good bike project. Again, we've received significant funding from, very helpful, significant to us funding for our bike project in Otaki, and it does stretch wider than the community, where we receive bikes that either just aren't being used, and we have a bunch of volunteers. We have part-time funded coordinator, Kirsty Doyle, who you know runs the the Kite Festival, sorry. And so she has never ridden a bike, but she manages this very well. And we're stepping up. We're just about to announce that we're moving our operation to some spare land at Otaki College as well, because, bikes, kids, interaction with the community, it's a very good way of getting into the community. So we've done hundreds and hundreds of bikes, and it goes really well. So the other one, which is a relatively new project, is the Otaki Carbon Forest, which actually has been quite a sort of a uplift for the organisation, speaking as a trustee and the chair, as it's brought a different sort of a different part of society to our organisation, because we're giving a lot, and to get landowners coming in, people with a bit more substance than the people that don't have land, their own houses, things like that. And so it's been really successful, and I could talk more about the specifics, but again, there's more information on our website. But we've got quite a little huddle of activity going on, which is really bringing in people to which we're strategically filtering into our other efforts, where we can twist their arms, because again, it's all volunteer stuff. So besides very modest part-time paid contractors, so that's really going quite well. And that's a way again of a community taking ownership of its own interests in climate matters, and it's a great thing, planting trees. We know council's a strong advocate for that, and many of you around here do that just because it's a good thing as well. So there's obviously millions of questions you could ask about all of this, but I'll just keep pushing through. So Otaki Energy Pulse. So what the heck's going on with all this? So this is, I should know more about this because I'm involved with energy, but it's a great opportunity for communities to give themselves electrical energy resilience. And what we've tried to do, again, we've received council funding for this, is to sort of show the community a sort of an energy matrix of what goes on, and as it evolves, it'll have CO2 reductions and all those calculations. But really, it's with all your apps now, we can bring it up here. I mean, these are some systems we've got at the college. We have leases with the Department of Education, which is quite rare to get. We also have another solar farm generating electricity at the Otaki Wastewater Treatment Plant, in collaboration with council, obviously. And it's about bringing the numbers to the community. So that's an evolving thing, because again, if you can't measure it, you don't know. I mean, that sounds really simple, but like your car tells you now. If you've got a modern car, if you can afford a modern car, it'll tell you how much fuel you're using. If you drive it less on the foot, it'll show you how much you're saving. So again, that's our education back to the community. There's the matrix. Quite complicated. It was a bit of a brain dump of all the various inputs coming into it's now called Pulse, but data project was where we started from, being able to take all the various inputs and put them out on various platforms that anyone can look at. Billboards, one of our visions is billboards at the end of each part of the motorway or near the motorway in and out of Otaki that display what might be going on in the town as we see more renewable energy, either commercial, private, etc., and then just other complex things we've sort of brainstormed to achieve. So really critical in the future. Right, so pushing on clean energy. So powering up Otaki. So we've got some big visions. Some of them have been quashed, unfortunately. We had a very large shovel-ready project in with the previous government after COVID, with support from the council to do much larger solar farm on some wasteland on the old landfill. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but we're going to keep pushing on. Rokumura, it's the wastewater treatment plant solar farm, again in collaboration with council, offsets carbon from the council's database or volumes. Council get the full benefit of the carbon reduction of our solar farm, and we get paid by council at an agreed rate based on what they would pay to an external company with external shareholders. So the money stays in the town, basically. And we're looking at some expansion there. We're working with council, wastewater people there about the expansion of the loads there as they're upgrading for the growth in the town. And we'd like to be able to offer an expansion to our system to help everyone benefit. And excess power, which we generate a fair bit, both the revenue from council and the export to the grid, all the money goes into the Whakahiko Fund, which we every year we've now aligned it with Matariki, and we have a public sort of fund that we receive. We go out to the community, real simple stuff, 1 page of form, not 10 pages of different questions asking the same question. Real simple stuff. We will even help community groups fill out the form. And so projects we've run, we've distributed over $50,000. In recent times, some of that money is reducing because of the reducing of funding. We've had to capture some of that more, full disclosure, for us to keep the organisation happening, but we'll still be continuing the fund. Some of the funds, the college e-Velocity project, which Otaki College has received huge praise, beaten all the private schools on shoestring budget. So that's a great thing you can look at more on. And little funding projects actually making solar panels, which you may seem to think is like incredible. Well, there it is being done. Using old window sashes. I don't know if you can see the old window sash, and actually soldering up all the little bits and pieces. So that was a project we funded. And obviously food is energy, and obviously partnering up with Māori Lands. It's a big deal for us. Community push there. And water collection projects, and more technical evaluation of the solar farm by third-party people about putting in end-of-life electric vehicle batteries as stationary power storage to buffer the sun, to provide energy at night. And it's actually resilience, because an EV battery actually holds a lot of energy to run a house for quite a while. So it's getting there. All of that stuff's getting there. So capability and resources. So yeah, we've got significant trustee experience, all the usual stuff that you'd want in a group, that councillor helping along an awful lot. We've got strategic plans underway, and actually got meetings this afternoon with new trustees from the community, bringing more governance and financial expertise, which is helpful, because most of our trustees are also gung-ho project into the projects. So, but this is the key bit that keeps the high-level funders and structure of the organisation are tickety-boo. So, yeah, obviously collaborate with anyone who really wants to collaborate, if it makes sense to. We don't compete. Well, when we say we don't compete on our day-to-day stuff. Obviously, competing for funding is is the tough end of it all, because there's so many funders that could receive funding that don't get it, and we're very honoured to receive it from groups and organisations we do. A few little awards there that we're quite proud of. Again, this was in conjunction with KCDC, so obviously things KCDC are involved in as well. So again, we've got a strong partnership with Council. So powering up Otaki, so there's our little wee solar farm there. Cable running across into here, running all these whiz-bang things that clean up our effluent. The proposal we put into the shovel ready was to do a solar farm on the old landfill that went right up here, all of that. So about 100 times more than that. And we're still keen to see that happen, but you know, things have moved on with that. When we did that at the time, it was all very you know, cutting edge, and that's what we like to think, that we're sort of creating the ideas. Nowadays, the solar farm stuff is all quite commercial, and the value of solar panels is probably a quarter of the cost of what that was. But you know, if you waited for the newest cell phone, you'd still be waiting a long time. So again, you've got to just get into it. Yeah, so yeah, very proud of it. It's a big deal for us and a big deal for KCDC. So, and we do host quite a few people. We actually charge people we call it clean tech tourism. It's quite a big thing, and we've had a few groups come in, foreign university groups studying, coming in for block courses have come up, and we host them, take them through a similar presentation. Yeah, so this is the stuff at the college. Initially, we helped the alumni trust there with a system of their own, and then when we got the funding for the work at the KCDC wastewater treatment plant, we also, in that same funding from Wellington Community Fund, they funded about what we call a 30 kilowatt system on the college as well. So we're involved with two systems there. And there's quite a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes on, like the billing with KCDC is very complex because of time of day charging. We've had to develop software for that. We've got lots of technical problems at present going on with routers and inverters and other technical things. And working with council, we've all learnt a lot through these periods. But yeah, we're stuck at the moment on a technical issue, but that will all be resolved, and council staff are very amicable at seeing through. Yeah, they may even cause the problem, so you know, we'll see through that as we have done with other technical issues. Also, council, when they upgraded the Otaki swimming pool some years ago, removed all the solar thermal hot water heating, and it never went back on, so we did a little bit of a deal with council, and most of that equipment heats the Otaki swimming pool, which Shelley and I worked on. You know, I used to meet Shelley some years ago, and now the pool reaches ridiculous temperatures of like 34 degrees in summer. Now the problem is keeping the pool cleansed because of the length of time the pool is open for. So again, careful what you wish for. But yeah, so bunch of stuff, all good community activity. Really happy for anyone to get involved outside of the, you know, we regard what we've done as open to all. A lot of people approach us about how did you get this going, how did you get that going, and we try and feed that, but most of it's come from volunteer time and also convincing key stakeholders that this sort of model is you're going to get bang for your buck. And any donated money is safe and accounted for, and we amplify it out into the community. So, yeah, huge stuff. Thanks very much. Welcome to hit me up with some questions I'll hopefully be able to answer.
Well, thank you, Lee, so much for coming along to present to us today and what you have shown us. And I know this is probably only the tip of the iceberg. The work that you're doing is absolutely inspirational as far as I'm concerned. And, you know, it's amazing that I suppose you have made such a major difference to your community, and basically from the youngest members of the community to the oldest as well. I'll leave it there for the moment, but I see that we have a number of questions, so we'll go off to questions. Christian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora, thanks very much for the presentation and all the work that you do. My question is about going back to the warm-up project, and you are trying to reach renters and vulnerable people. So with the renters, I assume that the houses they're in are up to the Healthy Home standard to start with.
Well,
Is that
that's debatable.
okay?
The first thing is debatable on individual houses. Yeah.
Okay, and then I assume that you then deal with a client base of owner-occupiers but they're vulnerable people.
Absolutely. Yeah, both sides of it. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything that could be done with vulnerable people to overcome barriers to them getting, say, solar that would benefit them? Do you think, if you could had a magic wand?
Oh, man, I'd love one of them. If I had one of them, we'll all be driving biofueled cars and ferries would run on biofuel and our energy crisis would be over. But yeah, focusing in on that specific question, there's the political shifts in funding is really tricky, like ECA shifting. You know, 1 minute they're doing 100% heat pumps installation, then it drops to 60, then it comes back to 80. Finding that 20%, if it's a moving target, to 40, no matter what the gap is really difficult. So that's one thing that can help, is getting that top up. That makes a big difference. Top up makes a big difference. And we are so lucky that we've had some local residents donate modest amounts of money, like $2,000 here or there. But if you need $400 for your top up, that's quite a lot if you don't have it. So we stretch that out. So you know, that's a big part of it. You know, we don't talk too much about council housing for various reasons, but would like to. And council housing is extremely sensitive topic. It's one reason why we don't talk about it much. But we'd like to help more in that area, because, you know, what do you do when you're trying to target something to improve it? Try and tackle a big area that makes a big difference, right? And so, you know, council housing is something that we'd like to work with more in the town and wider. That engagement's really hard. In terms of your question around solar and stuff, yeah, one project we'd really like to do is, there are systems you can get, is hot water heating is arguably your biggest proportion of bill, say 30 to 40%, depending. You know, if you've got a big family, you might use a lot more hot water, and you've got everything else turned off. You're not heating the house very well, so it might proportionally be bigger. Is a system where you put a couple of solar panels, like not much bigger than that area, on your roof, and keep it all low voltage, and just go straight into the hot water cylinder in a little wee box, and you get a special element that's like 12 volt and 240 volt. And so when the sun's shining, it's displacing energy coming into the house, going into your hot water. That's a real thing. It arguably probably only needs an electrician to change the element. Everything else, because it's low voltage, but we'd really like to investigate that, because hot water's number one expense for people on their bill. Yeah, I could go on, but yeah, that's one project that isn't here that I was talking to the trustees about. One of our trustees is just renovating her house bathroom at the moment, and is putting one of these New Zealand developed systems on, which we want to get some data from, but we'd really love to accelerate it. Really would. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
I won't hog all the questions.
I'll try not to take too long to answer them.
Councillor Warwick.
Oh, I just want to say I met Lee a long time ago, and to be so passionate and so committed for so long is amazing. You guys are amazing. They talk Japanese because I don't understand all the electrical stuff. To me, it seems like Japanese, but amazing. You've done an amazing job. Thank you on behalf of Otaki.
Well, thanks, Shelley. And again, you know, everyone's good at their areas, and without the Otaki Community Board funding, support, and individuals involved, people, not organisations, but and council staff, none of this would happen. So, you know, the lobbying, different, to use that word respectfully, the support from individuals is how we've got there. I mean, I know how to run a Cook Strait ferry. I don't know how to argue for money very well, you know. So, yeah, so we're all good at what we do, I hope, and that's why we're all here to push the community interests forward.
Yeah, and team approaches. Thank you, Shelley. Deputy Mayor Kirby.
Kia ora, Lee. Thank you for the work, as others have said. I was going to follow up on the question that Christian had around particularly landlords and healthy homes. This is probably a sensitive topic, but do you advocate to the tenants to chase what they can legally to ensure that their landlords are making homes up to healthy home standard?
It's probably the hardest question anyone could ask,
Yep.
in terms of an answer as well. The tenants are so nervous about
Sure.
raising anything, and I think there's quite a big, you know, having been a significant landlord in a previous life, that always provided good housing. One thing, if you're going to rent a house, would you live it in yourself? Live in it yourself. And that was
Yeah.
our policy. So, just knowing that the market seems to be, a lot of landlords are ditching houses at present, seems to be going on because of the standards, from real estate agents I talk with. So I think the biggest thing is that fear of being kicked out.
Sure.
Oh yeah, well, we'll do the installation, but we're going to put your rent up $50. You know, that you could argue that's fair enough, but if you can't pay it, it's difficult. So it is very tricky, and it would be one of the most sensitive, to reiterate, questions we try and manage
Sure.
through. Yeah, really tricky, really sad actually. Yeah.
It is sad that we've got to that situation with our housing, really, for our, particularly those that are most vulnerable.
Oh, it's out of control. I mean, just an example, I used to rent a flat in Upper Hutt for $250. Our family used to rent it. It's now $600. I can't afford that.
Yeah.
It's just unreal. So, you know.
So a question in a different topic. You were talking about business energy as one of the things. Have you linked together with the new business association, the OthBar, to see where you can partner with them in terms of that work?
Yep. I personally haven't, but I know that other trustees are milling around that.
Okay.
I've had to sort of, I love the bike project, but I've just got to get away from it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, but yes, that's right. And we did go to the inaugural sessions
Great.
to evolve that. We could do more in that area, and actually I'll make a mental note to follow up on that.
Brilliant.
I'd like to help there more. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Lee.
I would just say, just because of where I saw you a few weeks ago, you know, there are big energy projects that the district and country needs to look at. Like, why are we burning natural gas to generate electricity to heat your home with a heat pump? Yeah, why are we doing that? That's just so dumb. Just burn the gas to heat your home. Why aren't we burning the trees that are renewable energy for electricity generation when we can't export them to China? I mean, it's just madness. So I have a meeting with Shane Jones, because I went up and hit him up, and I'll be talking to him about this with my other colleagues. So these are big picture things about energy crises New Zealand's right now facing. If the barrel price wasn't $60 today and our $1.60 would be $3 a litre for petrol or more. So, I mean, these are the real things that drive the economy. This stuff is, you know, all good and well because it's real as well, but the big picture stuff is we are right on the edge of real trouble. And so working with council on energy efficiency and big projects, trying to get in the government's ear on developments for the RIFT Regional Infrastructure Fund, which is what Shane is talking to us about. we need to make these big things happen, and I'd like to think that councils will support those sort of initiatives too. That's my day job. Thanks.
Thank you, Lawrence. So we'll now move on to Simon Black.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Kia ora. Thanks, Lee. On behalf of the Otaki Community Board, thank you, and to your incredible team for so much work you do for us. There's so many parts of my life which have been impacted positively impacted by Energize Otaki, so appreciate that. My questions are, you've got so much going on. How do you keep control of everything that you're doing, and how do you communicate to your potential customers about how you can help them?
Well, the first thing is the trustees are taking on no more projects. That's more than enough. And we have to stick to our knitting within that. And there's shifting sands within all of those. There's great concern about funding. And again, council funding has been absolutely 100%, if not, call it 70% of all this. So that's the biggest concern from the trustees' point, is what do we pivot when funding rolls over, or it rolls over and shifts. We have 3 part-time staff contractors that do 15 hours a week sort of thing to sort of manage the ops. The trustees all muck in. We try and keep a very, very, we try not to meddle and just, look after each leader who looks after their projects, looks after that particular area of the trustees. So again, I think it's highly organised. I think that's why council supported us so much, right back to the days when Gail Ferguson started all this off with the clean tech stuff, was showing a clear, level-headed, because with all due respect to community groups, some of them can come in here and be a little bit not focused, not clear, don't have a good governance. They may be just not, they're not. They might just be an incorporated society or trying to form that, whereas we've gone all the way with legal advice. Do this, do it right. So I guess it's just hang on to your hat and try your best.
Yeah. So that probably leads into the next question: is how can we make Energize Otaki more sustainable? Because I've seen organisations which do have a very large project base. When one goes down, they all go down like a deck of cards. And just how can we actually make your organisation more resilient and less dependent on the funding?
Well, I would say too, careful what you name yourself. Could be Energize Kapiti.
Yeah.
Could be Energize Hutt Valley. We really try not to pin ourselves too much because because we are doing projects out. The Warm Up has done some work in Levin, done work down here, the bikes, here, the wastewater treatment money around. So again, I'd like to sort of reaffirm that we're by no means exclusive. Probably should never have named ourselves Energize Otaki in hindsight. But you've got to start somewhere. And so to your question, we have to manage good governance. It's as simple as that, just like you guys, just like all the elected members do. We're probably going to have to pivot a bit, to use that jargony word. We are aware of the funding pool tightening from every angle. Wellington Community Fund, really struggling. They've had a change in owners as well, which, makes it harder. Yeah. We've just got to stick to our knitting, good governance. We've got a big budgeting session coming up soon, talking to council staff after this meeting. So just hang in there, and we'd love to have more involvement, more volunteer people coming in. I think I may have even hit you up sometime.
You have.
And you're a good man fighting in your corner, and maybe there's no time to help us directly, but directly you can. So we welcome all the help, and we'd really like to see Kapiti do better in all these areas of energy efficiency and climate and so on, because there's some tricky stuff approaching in the next decades, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate, we're also time poor at some stage, you know, and so at some stage in the future, I'd like to be able to commit to you a bit more. But please, if there's anything you do need, let us know as soon as
Yeah.
possible.
Well, we're always up there, aren't we?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Simon. So now I'll move on to Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Hey, look, awesome work, Sean. What I wanted to say was just acknowledge what you guys have done, and it's really appreciate you coming in here and giving us an update as well. I was there when you guys opened up your solar panels, and I think the first time you actually allocated some money back into the community as well. So, excellent cope-up. I just had two things I just wanted to ask about. One was just checking. Do you have a relationship with the New Zero Waste Hub that's opened up down here in Parapara Umu as such? You know, is there any sort of collaboration, synergy there at all?
Oh, absolutely. So firstly, the Zero Waste Otaki came out of a group I was involved in, but sort of managed to, and that got going. But yeah, Sustainability Trust, absolutely. I mean, we've partnered with them on the warm-up and all of that. So yeah, Georgie Ferrari, when she was CEO of the Wellington Community Trust at the time, gave us the $407,000 for the solar farm.
Mhm.
And so we have a good personal relationship with her. There was a, with the climate change funding we received for our bike space project, there was a kind of feeling coming towards us that we should move it all to there. But we pushed back on that, on the bike stuff, but we were, because, you know, stretched. And we want to get it right in Otaki and then partner out where we can. So yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a good approach, keeping it
Yeah.
local as well. I think that, you know, add 5 years to what's happening over there,
Absolutely.
you know, and they'll be doing exactly what, well, not exactly what you're doing, but, you know,
Yeah.
you guys will be that much more advanced as well. Second question was just, I want to touch on your comment around the housing. You talked about concerns around council housing. Are we talking about the older person's housing, or you're talking about social housing, government social housing in general?
Oh, I think from my point of view, I'd just be generalising without knowing too much more. I just know that with ratepayers, if I can use that word, owning, you know, the council owning those properties and just various talks, and I'm not close to it at all, so
Yep.
I'm just shooting from the hip. There's huge opportunity to, you know, that those assets should be kept, they should be maintained, they should be pristine, and they should be a showcase for the town. And we'd be happy to help with that, and all with, you know, your bigger stakeholders like ICA and whoever. Again, I don't know enough about it. I just think that.
I'm picking you've got a project lead in that space, or a person who sort of, that's their sort of thing.
Pardon me,
I'm picking you as part of your group. You've got someone who focuses on that.
Yeah, it's sort of a little bit of a touchy subject, I think. I don't know much about it, I'm afraid.
The reason I'm saying that is just sort of.
Yeah, I think I'll talk to council after this to remind me where we're at with that. I think as a policy we've stuck with private housing and private landlord housing.
Yep.
I think we've done curtains in quite a few council houses, which you'd think council would provide. But Housing Corp back in the day, they never provided carpet curtains, light fittings. I did as a private landlord, carpet curtains, light bulbs, everything.
Yeah.
Walk in, turn it on.
Cool.
So again, it's
You know,
a subject we could delve into.
Yeah, and I'm quite happy to come up and have a chat about that. It's sort of in my committee, so I was just I was just quite interested in sort of hooking up with someone, potentially just finding out a little bit more about that. But I'll follow that up.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Lovely.
Absolutely.
Thank you, and awesome work.
Thank you, Councillor Halliday. So I have a couple of, I suppose, questions and thoughts. So I know at the beginning of the triennium, elected members came to visit the facilities there at the waste treatment plant, and it's absolutely amazing seeing those solar panels, and I suppose hearing about some of the work that you're doing, particularly around trying to give EV batteries a second life, and you've touched on that today, and so that work is still progressing, is it?
Yeah, well, we funded a specialist, a former Energise Otaki member, to evaluate the costs of doing it and plugging in and all of that at a point in time, which would be about 2 years ago now. So again, it's changing as those batteries are coming on. We'd like to revisit it at an appropriate time. You know, when the noise, maybe from the Ministry of Environment, or, you know, if they're operating well or not, who knows, but comes around these EVs, batteries going to landfill or catching fire at scrap metal places, or just the fact that they shouldn't be dumped, that interest had come back again, I think. And because it's so cheap, they're like quarter the price of the equivalent of buying a new battery. So it's a good idea. I mean, then what do you do with them as they degrade? But what they talk about is putting your EV battery on holiday. Like, it's the performance you need to drive your car is phenomenal compared to, say, just running this room here, for example, just continually trickling out. So they can last for a very long time. Then what do you do with them? And we would like to think that recycling the EV batteries is coming sooner than people think around the world, of stripping them back down. As resource depletion hits the precious metals and that go into them, the opportunity to recycle them gets cost competitive. So yeah, we'd like to do more of that.
Yeah. So is the technology there, or is this a case of where it still has to be worked through for that particular?
It's all about economics.
Right. So it is there, but it's just economics. Okay.
Absolutely. All the council cars can plug in, and the ones they've got now, and talk to the.
Okay. That's really good to know.
It's all there, and that's the car. Let alone ripping out the 400 or 500 kilos of batteries and having it in a cabinet as a UPS or whatever.
So, because I know that I'm very mindful of the fact that you and your team are really busy with the current projects that you have. But I also hear that KCDC is supporting you in your work here. And I suppose one of the things, to me, it seems it's been a game changer in terms of what you have done in the Otaki community. And I suppose, to me, I'm just wondering whether council have or anyone else has actually looked at how some of your initiatives could be extended to the whole Kapiti Coast to actually make a much wider impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Very keen to have those conversations, and they are evolving anyway. Absolutely.
Because I suppose, one of the things, particularly when you talked about the swimming pool, we have got, some outdoor swimming pools, like I know in Waikanae, for example, a lot of a lot of money is spent on gas there.
It's the biggest bill.
Yeah, and so in terms of being able to look at some of the initiatives, heat exchangers for the one here, which I think there might be something here now.
Heat pump.
Yes, or heat exchangers, actually taking the heat from the building and using it to heat up the water. Those sorts of things, to me, seem things that I think they actually are inspirational for our community to see these things happening on a bigger scale, as well as saving us money as well.
Yeah. So just in terms of council infrastructure, so I've talked to council several times about converting. Again, why would you burn huge volumes of natural gas to heat swimming pools, especially in winter, like massive volumes, when you could use wood chip that can't be exported, and that whole industry's dying. And I've met with council, with the wastewater treatment plant, running their pellet stuff to try and get something going locally, where we make pellets locally, or converting it to wood chip, which is cheaper. The original boiler was going to be wood chip, but council got nervous because of previous issues with technology at the facility. But now the time has come back. But again, you, with all due respect, some people don't like change. Wait till the gas gets turned off, you'll be bloody bringing the phone to burn trees. So that's something we've talked to council staff about, converting all the swimming pools to run on biomass rather than burning gas to generate electricity to heat the water. But it's decided by people that I guess don't want to shift, with all due respect. It's a lot of infrastructure as well.
No doubt.
It's a lot of infrastructure.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think the energy crisis currently now that they're saying isn't an energy crisis is being diverted by turning people off gas. So that's not a crisis. That is a crisis. So anyway, I have to be careful of getting a bit inflamed about some of this stuff.
So the last question I had, I was really interested in you saying that you'd had some workshops about people building their own solar panels.
Yeah.
So is it feasible for people to do such a course so they could actually set up their own? Because obviously electricity, it's a thing of, a little bit scary for some people. But is that possible so that they can do some of the stuff themselves?
Yeah, well, we did it as a sort of an educational program that we funded, and again, keeping in mind, keeping it all at low voltage, like 12 volt, not 240 or more. So again, it was all quite safe to play with, and like for off-grid type, like people with a batch, and they
Yes.
wanted, I mean, you're not going to make one for as cheap as you're going to buy one off Trade Me from China for. It's just not going to do it. You can go down to any shop and buy one that's this big for, you know, $50 or whatever. Whether it lasts 10 years, who knows? But you know, so yeah, it was a fun thing. It excited people that it could be done, and but yeah, again, unfortunately, as I've had it beaten into me over the years of all my efforts with biofuels and shipping fuels and that, is if it's not economical, it's not going to happen.
I know.
It's as simple as that, I'm afraid. Unless there's a shift in political will, politicians, you know, to push it that way. And maybe, again, when we had the solar farm, and I'll say this because he's the CEO, he would not sign our memorandum of understanding unless he got cheaper power than he could get from Meridian Energy. But then the mayor said, well, what would the ratepayers say if they knew that you were holding these guys over a barrel over a few cents a kilowatt hour for this community project? He giggled and then signed. So this is the sort of problem you've got, and that's why the politicians, that's why we spend so much time with council staff and politicians to try and get these stories across. But look, it's a fun project, and if we could fund it, we'd do more. But I think giving advice to people is something we do through that.
Yes.
Nowadays, it's turnkey stuff. You can ring in an electrician, and they'll generally do solar for you. There's financing. There's carpet factories, carpet shops sell solar panels. So.
Wow.
Harrison's. So.
Well, thank you so much.
I'm not sure if that really answers.
Yes,
your
no,
question.
it's really good
not
just to
quite-
have these to chew the fat. So
Yeah,
thank you so much for coming along
Great.
today, and you're obviously very, very passionate about this. You've made a huge difference to your community, and I think hopefully it's given members of this committee and other elected members who've come along some food for thought, and those listening online about what potential there is out there for I suppose for our district,
That's
and
right.
I suppose for our country as well.
Absolutely.
And yes, and I wish you all the best for your continued work, and hopefully funding becomes a bit easier.
Yeah. Well, as I said, thank you very much, and
Yes.
again, thank you for council support and the good work the officers do. It's great personal relationships, which
Yes,
is what
yes.
what humans enjoy.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very kindly,
Cheers.
Lee. Thank you. Well, that was very interesting. So thank you again, Lee, and your team. If you could thank your team, Lee, if you could thank your team behind as well, that'd be much appreciated. Right. So now item. Actually, before we move on to item 7, for Kim, who's online, and also for Michael, the Quentin Poole's submission has been emailed to both of you, so you can see it. Sophie, you already have it, I think. So now moving on to members' business, item 7, leaves of absence. I haven't received any, but as normal, you're able to advise the Mayor of any of those. Matters of an urgent nature, I haven't been advised of any of those either. But what I will sort of just slot in here is that there has been quite a lot of conversations around the Otahanga shop closing. And I was talking to a council officer today about this, and so there's going to be some media put out on this later on today with the Q&A, as well as an explanation about what's going on. So that would be good to get some clarification on that. So now I'd like to move on to our updates. Item 8.1, our preliminary investigation into inclusionary zoning. So I'd like to invite the presenters to come up here and speak. Thank you.
Kia ora. So I'm just going to set the scene for our discussion today. I know you will have read the paper and the team will talk about the detail in it shortly, but taking you back to Plan Change 2, intensification, we had some follow-up items that we're coming back to talk about. In other discussions, we've talked about urban panels. Today, we're bringing the concept of inclusionary zoning to the table. Now, this topic is coming to this committee and it's also going to the Social Sustainability Committee. And I just want to clarify why. So, inclusionary zoning is not a new concept, but we don't do it here in New Zealand. It's used quite extensively in other jurisdictions. Just having heard the chair read out a submission, in public speaking time this morning, I think you heard some of the social sides of considerations, not all, but some, of inclusionary zoning. Counter to that, there's also some environmental ones that you might want to consider. And so today, we're interested in hearing from this committee about those environmental considerations that you might be thinking about when you think of inclusionary zoning. And just to really position us into that zone, I mentioned that it came from intensification for a purpose, because off the back of intensification, from an environmental perspective, there can be good and there can be not so good things that occur. And those might be the things that we're still interested in exploring and thinking about in terms of inclusionary zoning. We're not asking for decision. What we're doing is just starting to explore a concept, look at it, understand whether it's good, bad or indifferent, and also whether it makes sense as something that you do locally, regionally or nationally. So we are having conversations in a regional setting about opportunities like this. So I think it's really good for us to start talking about these things and having discussions about them before we get to a point of going, please make a decision. So that's really where we're at. We're at the really beginning of a conversation. So what you would have seen in this paper today and what you're going to hear from the team is more about so what is inclusionary zoning? What do we know about it? Where is it being used? What more would we look at? Actually, what kinds of discussions might we want to have at a regional level or national, actually? So we're just trying to get some perspectives on it. What's not happening today is we're not asking you to make a decision on whether we want to do inclusionary zoning. We're not asking you to support or not support a decision being made in another committee on inclusionary zoning. It really is a chance to just start the discussion. I do believe this is something that is likely to be of interest as we move forward, very much about the environment today. Very topical for housing, which is, and I will say who is here with me today. Some familiar faces. We obviously have district planning, so we have Jason and Esther. We've also got Stephen from a housing perspective. So it covers kind of a multitude of areas. And so really today is really a chance for us to share a bit about what it is, and to hear back from you. Also just to kind of understand the questions that people have and the things that people think we really need to think about. So it's a really open conversation, and what we'll do with what we get today is take it away so that when we're starting to look at it, to come back and go, oh, what do we think and what would our suggestions to you be, we can have covered off those things. So as an opening, that's where we're at. And on that basis, I will hand over to the team. So I'll firstly hand over to Jace and we'll go from there.
Thanks. Thank you. Kia ora koutou. Let me begin actually by thanking the team for putting this piece of work together. ASTHA in particular has been looking internationally and across New Zealand at this topic for a couple of months actually, and has really got to grips with the nitty-gritty, as you've seen in the material that's been provided to you. And Stephen also for his support along the way to ask this really is, as Chris has mentioned, a joint piece of work. It's much bigger than district planning, which is why we've taken a much broader approach in terms of the staff and teams involved. So thank you for all your work. Why aren't you working? Oh, yeah, great. I'll delegate that. Thank you very much, Evan. It does work, it's just me. So, there are a lot of reasons why we're here today. The main ones are because Council expected us to come back and talk about this again. And that was arising from the Plan Change 2 decisions. But it actually goes back a little bit further than that to the housing strategy as well. Investigating this tool was something that Council has committed to doing all the way back in 2022 in that strategy. So I'm going to walk you through a very fulsome presentation more quickly than you're going to be able to deal with every single detail, but hopefully you've had a chance to digest. And if you are supportive of this, this certainly will not be the one and done conversation on this. It will take a lot of further conversation. So I think my message there is don't worry too much if you don't feel like you've got absolutely every single aspect of inclusionary zoning nailed in your brain today, because that's because there's about 3,000 billion aspects of it. All right, I'm going to just keep moving and go straight to what I think is a pretty important slide. What actually is inclusionary zoning? Getting your head around that is probably step number one. So in italics there, you can see a definition. There is actually no one agreed definition, but that's just trying to help you get your head around it. A planning tool that mandates or incentivises private developers to include affordable housing within new market rate developments. So it is actually a developer-led, in that sense, solution to achieving more affordable housing. I'll let you read those words there. And I'm sure you're going to have some questions about exactly what each of these concepts mean, but I'll keep moving for now.
Just note, obviously for this committee, as you read that, the relevance to things like district planning is how we use our land, how we plan in our community. That has implications for our environment. It even has implications for things like emissions reduction, and so all those sorts of things. So if you keep that back of mind as we start to go through, how is it defined, and for this group, what does it mean?
This is a good one because it talks about what it's not, and that can often be a good way of understanding what it is. It's not just social housing. It's not a temporary discount where the next owner gets to come in and make a whacking great capital gain. It's not funded by rates, which is obviously a very attractive aspect of it, or central government, given how reliable or not that input would be. Again, an attractive aspect of it. And it's not about separate or segregated housing, which is important too. I'll let you digest that table. I think the last one's a good one as well. You can't expect that inclusionary zoning is going to solve all social ills in a community, or indeed even by itself necessarily deliver, make sure that everyone in the community has a warm, safe, affordable house to live in. But it could be a useful tool in the toolkit. So there's been quite a bit of work, and Stephen would speak better to this than I would, about all of the issues with affordable housing in New Zealand. But also in Kapiti, there has been a housing needs assessment, and it identifies there is an issue So then the question becomes, what are we going to do about it? And inclusionary zoning is one option for council to consider. It has been successful, particularly overseas, but there has been, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later, some efforts in New Zealand as well. So this slide's trying to capture the basic steps in setting up inclusionary zoning, getting the policy settings right, larger scale developments providing for some component of affordable housing, making sure that those affordable houses have some sort of a legal tool so that they remain affordable houses in the long term, and having some sort of arrangement with a trusted housing provider to manage them going forward. This is obviously a concept that, while it is delivered by the market, it needs ongoing support and somebody to watch over it. In that sense, it's not a $0 thing for probably council or at least some other organisation. It's not just the market, I guess is my point.
Again, I think one of the things to think about at this point is obviously locally one might assume that would be the new trust that we have put in place. But actually, when we get into some examples of what's happened elsewhere, it might be that it makes more sense, if you're interested in inclusionary zoning, to look at that from a regional or national approach. And so those are some of the things that you'd want to unpack and understand. It doesn't necessitate that it's something that you automatically go, if you're interested in it, it must be locally based. Pros and cons to that as well, but just putting it out there.
So this is a slide that I think the main point of it is there's a shed loads of things to actually get in place in order for inclusionary zoning to work. I can see a little bit of parallels here with the urban panel thing actually, but that's certainly a bit simpler than this. You basically can't just roll out inclusionary zoning by a plan change. There is a lot more that needs to happen, and it needs to keep happening for the life that you want inclusionary zoning to work. So it's actually quite a commitment. And here are some of the elements that we've identified through research that would need to be in place. I'm not going to run through them all now, but again, my key message being, it's not something to treat lightly. If you're going to commit to this, you're in for the long haul, and there's quite a lot to be doing. So internationally, and you'll note there are no Russia examples here, this has been used in very capitalist countries. In fact, I think the US would certainly see itself as being one of the more capitalist countries on the globe, effectively to deliver a lot of affordable housing. Now, we could spend weeks talking about each of these, of course, and we're not going to do that. But we just wanted to, I guess, show that it's been in place sometimes for quite a long time elsewhere, and it actually has led, according to our research, to actual things being built that are affordable, i.e. it wasn't just a talk fest, someone didn't just change a plan and then nothing happened. It would appear from our research that actual affordable houses have actually been built. People are living in them, benefiting from it in overseas jurisdictions. The New Zealand story is quite an interesting one as well. And look, I think it is fair to say when Chris says In New Zealand, we probably haven't had a fully fledged, what you would call, having all of the elements together, and it's been in place for a while, and it's the classic inclusionary zoning model that you might think of. But we haven't really had that in place anywhere yet. But what we have had in places like Queenstown is actually has been delivered in its own way for quite some time. Maybe not with the formality of a district plan behind it, but still elements of it in place and delivering actual housing. Another interesting example is Wellington City. They kind of they got it moving. They got it in their draft plan, but they didn't take it all the way through their second generation district plan process. They got the speed wobbles on it out of some concerns around probably the lack of national direction to support it. And it's not that the national direction is against it, but it's often handy when you've got quite a tricky thing to do in a planning space to be able to lean back on a very clear national direction that says we're doing the right thing. This is something that we should/must do. And there is a hole in the national framework, if you're looking for it, that isn't there. So when you're trying to do a plan change and that's not there, it makes your job a bit harder. Waipa, Waikato, Hamilton are working together on inclusionary zoning as a scheme, and it's a bit of a potential model for this region to be thinking about entering into, and it's one of the reasons why ultimately in this paper it is being recommended that you certainly discuss the idea of this district taking a bit of a leadership role in an existing regional discussion through the Wellington Regional Leadership Committee on inclusionary zoning, because that sort of thing is actually happening elsewhere in the country. Of course, in Kapiti, this issue has been recognised for a while, affordable housing and the lack thereof, and there's been a lot of things that this council has been doing about it, which is great. So I guess treat this as something that could be added to the toolkit that's already in this district, full of good things, and some of those listed there, and Stephen, of course, would speak to those things far more than I would. But I note at the bottom there my reference to the Wellington Regional Leadership Committee. They are actively exploring this topic themselves. That is why it is a feasible option for council to consider, to really get in there on that proactively and see where it might go. The reason why up in Waikato they're banding together, and why down in Wellington there's also some efforts to band together, is because just going alone as a district on this topic is quite hard. Wellington found it quite hard for that for the first reason up there, the legal uncertainty. But there are also economic considerations and developer considerations. That is true. They need to be worked through. There needs to be really good engagement with the development community before you enter into something like this. It is a valid concern if you're going ahead with something like this at a district level, that you may create an incentive for developers to look over the border and wonder to themselves, could I make more profit elsewhere? That is a valid concern, and we are not suggesting anything other than you need to really grapple with that ultimately as a council before you go too far with something like this. But it makes a lot more sense to tackle that issue if you are tackling that as a region, and even more sense if you are tackling it as a country, because that way you kind of avoid that looking over the fence issue to a greater extent. There are some other issues mentioned there as well. Talked about the administering aspect of this concept. Again, it's not just a plan change and then you walk away. There are administration things to work through. And the last point really does play to, again, taking a more regional or even ideally national approach. So there is momentum to at least look at this, to at least at a regional level get in there and make sure that the tyres get really solidly kicked on this. And doing it at a regional level makes a lot of sense because that brings in regional resources. Why wouldn't you, if there's already a project underway, take advantage of that and try to get in there and try to give it a bit of an extra cuppity push and see where it might go that might best suit this district's interests. So as Chris mentioned right up front, today is about, I guess, creating a platform for you to talk about this. There really are, look, I think it's a great discussion. This is one of those things where all perspectives, all philosophies have a point. There are some really good things about this concept, but there are some really challenging aspects to it. That is why it's such a good thing to discuss. We're not seeking any decisions today, but the recommendations are, I guess, opening the door for you to perhaps endorse to the future conversations that will happen, both at social sustainability and then at SOF. Endorse the idea of, particularly at that regional level, getting in there and being quite proactive. I guess seeking a bit of a mandate from you today about that. I think that will wrap it up. Thanks very much.
Before we head back, I think the other just point that's not in the slides, and we have talked to you about before, is I think you know, and I'll just put on the table to remind you that what is starting to slide through the legislation reform pack as a requirement locally to plan for and support the effective delivery, not necessarily us doing it, but making it happen for targeted housing supply. So we're a Tier 1 district, we will get a housing target that is coming through. And so these, you know, as we always do, talking about the district plan, the rules, the settings we have, urban panels, the kind of tools we can use to try and control what I'm going to say is sustainable development, which I think we often talk about as good growth. This is one of the suite of tools or things we can think about in that discussion. So as a very wider context, this is absolutely something that council should be talking about. It's something we should be considering. It's something that in different levels we'd expect you to want to, even if we're talking about submissions, to have a view to advocate our points forward. So that's where we land at the end of this discussion. And so I think, hand back to the chair, that was our presentation today.
Thank you very much, Chris. So I'm just going to ask a couple of questions before I open it to the floor. So the just for clarification, the Wellington Regional Leadership Committee is made up of the chairs, the mayors, all the mayors in the Greater Wellington region.
Correct.
Plus various iwi representatives.
Yes, and just to elaborate on that, we have some central government agencies attending, so the Ministry for Housing and Urban Development comes to it. We have the Ministry for the Environment engaging with us, Te Pinu Kōkiri engages with us, and depending on the discussion, some wider central government agencies from time to time, but they'd be our core group. The focus is very much on the future development strategy, which obviously Kapiti approved and signed off on, and underneath that to push forward in some areas that have been agreed across the region. Housing is one of those. I think I don't need to keep reiterating the fact that it's a national crisis, it's a regional crisis, it's a local crisis, and so it's very much part of our discussion, and so we are exploring. Kapiti has been asked to take a lead in the housing space because even between now and the next 5 years, we're looking somewhere between about 3,000 and 5,000 new houses in our district. We are one of the growth nodes of this region. And so we are coming to talk to you before we enter into discussions in the regional space so that as we move forward, we take you with us and there aren't surprises on the other side.
Thank you. So I know when we've had conversations on this topic before, I personally am supportive of this type of model, but obviously some of the getting it over the line obviously looks a little bit problematic, and I see particularly what the Wellington City Council have made comments about, but I also see from us being involved in a bigger group, we are a very small player in that part, even if we are potentially going to be having some larger role in that. My question, and I'll probably have some more a bit later on, I'm going to ask this question, is how much potentially is this going to cost this council, both in terms of dollar figure as well as in time commitment by staff? Because, we're hearing all the time that we're under the pump in both of those areas.
We are, and sharing with you the Wellington Regional Leadership Committee and its work program, all councils have signed up to that. It's already baked into the budget. It's been a commitment for some time. We have a terms of reference, and we agree over the 3-year term, so the triennium, what work is a priority and the cost that each council contributes to that. And so we have other things we work on than housing. So, for example, one of the things we do is work on data. So we're looking at, by working together, how do we leverage and how do we save money? How do we reduce duplication? How do we do things that make more sense? So there's got to be a value proposition to it. So if I said to you, we're applying and prioritising what's already been an agreed priority set through that mechanism. So yes, it does take staff time, but that's been the case for the whole triennium. We are required through legislation to work on these things. So I'll just give an example. The Future Development Strategy is required by law. So we have to do it. We have to engage. It is not optional. So we are, through those mechanisms, taking the next step. So can do and come back on with further information around that, even to circulate it. Have briefed councillors, elected members on this work through the triennium, but do recognise obviously there's a lot been going on. So absolutely at this stage I'd say to you, there's no additional commitment to doing this, no decisions being made. This is really an exploratory zone of going, what if? We might do this work and come back and say, actually, it should be done nationally. Let's advocate up and say, nationally, you guys need to do something that would make sense or not. So at this stage, we don't have a preconceived idea of where it needs to land. We'd just like to make sure as we move forward that we're stepping in line with our elected members, with the community, and that we don't inadvertently engage in something, then come back here and it fall flat. Because it is, I'll say, it's not that it's a controversial topic, it's just got some tension in it. And so we'd prefer to start off the way we mean to go, and that's to be open about it.
So seeing I've still got the mic, I suppose, and I hear what you're saying, and to me the concept does sound really good, but I'm also aware that when PC2 got, we were forced into making a decision on it, there was some less desirable impacts on that, and particularly for our environment, and to me they haven't been addressed yet, and I feel that those sorts of things should be very high up the list, as well as spatial planning as well, rather than looking at individual things, looking at discrete parts of this. We need to have an overall plan so that we are moving forward and understanding how all those parts affect other moving parts and how they, aren't, I suppose, how they are having a good or bad impact on our environments that we're living in.
Absolutely. And I think as we head into the next triennium, our first sort of port of call is Vision Kapiti Phase 2 is going to be getting into that, looking across the district, understanding those impacts, looking at to get to 2060 and what our communities said they want. What does that look like? How will we change over time?
I just said one thing. You might recall at a earlier Climate and Environment Committee meeting that we talked about the ratification of the medium density residential standards. That's a decision that the next council will have to make, whether or not it wishes to ratify the MDRS or amend or remove. That decision itself will lead to, if it's not just accept as it is, another plan change, which could introduce the opportunity for what are those sort of rough edges of the MDRS that you would like to, as a council, modify, whether that be in the space of greater protections for vegetation, for example. There are ways that the MDRS could be modified so as to provide for greater protection of vegetation. So that will be a work stream, I think, that will squarely confront the issues that you're concerned about there.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. So now I'll open it to the floor. So Councillor Cooper.
Thanks, Jason and Chris, for your presentation. I actually thought it was a great presentation, and for me it just sort of flagged that we should stay the heck away from it, quite personally, from what I saw, for a couple of reasons. But I see just on page under background, so my question is, sufficient zone, we have the development capacity assessment confirmed that while there's sufficient zone capacity to meet housing demand, significant challenges remain around development, feasibility and delivery growth. This underscores the need for planning tools to not only enable growth, but secure affordable housing. But what I heard from you, what I heard in the presentation is, this probably won't enable growth. This could actually drive growth out of district.
I think I'm going to carefully say.
Could be one of the side effects of it.
It could,
unintended consequences.
but I guess what we shared with you today is just, I'm going to say, I'll sound weird, but of a desktop analysis of opportunity, what it looks like. If we were the only district to decide to do inclusionary zoning, hypothetically, then those might be some of the impacts. I think what you heard from the team today is just even our cursory analysis, I'll say, is we wouldn't suggest to you that we did it by ourselves at all, because I think there's more challenges than there are benefits. And so I think the point we're making is, if ever it got legs, it would probably very regionally or nationally that it added value if it was something people thought had value in the first place. So you never heard from us today holding the flag going, yes, this needs to be the first plan change of the new triennium. It's amazing. We think we need to better understand it, and we think, given that regionally and nationally would be where the interest was, that it's worthy being in discussion so that we can actually inform that rather than receive it. That's what you're hearing from us.
Okay, thank you. So you said just before that we have to focus on these legal requirements that we must focus on, or areas that we have to legally focus on. Is that one of the? Is this a focus that we must legally? Is this one of those?
So we have the Local Government Act. There's 50 pieces of other legislation that ask local government to do things. One that I've just shared with you today is the Urban Development Act. So when we are working in the Wellington Regional Leadership Group, a huge amount of our work is focusing on delivering under that Act. But the Local Government Act itself also talks to sustainable development, and a lot of the work that we do locally is about that. And so we have district planning, irrelevant of reform changes that come through, be it spatial or whatever that looks like. The idea that locally you're looking at how you use land and you're looking at how you grow is absolutely a fundamental requirement of local government through the Local Government Act and many other acts.
Yep, yeah, I get all that, but this inclusionary zoning, we're not statutorily required to focus on this. We're statutorily required to focus on statutory requirement stuff, but this is not a statutory requirement. So I guess my question there is, I would like us focusing on stuff that's a statutory requirement and doing that very, very well, than focusing on other stuff in broad, and particularly in this where, and I'll get to my next question, so
I think maybe
shouldn't we focus on stuff that we actually have to focus on?
Yeah, I think we hear that point. I think the reality is sometimes things that government choose to push forward for, even region push forward for or with, aren't a statutory requirement until it goes through. And so you have a chance to inform it or to receive it. Once it's in or something's decided, you take what you get and you apply it. And I am going to use intensification as an example of that. So that was something that we received that we were required to do. The opportunity to inform that ahead of it being something you have to do, I think has benefit. Because otherwise you literally are going, here's the end date, thou shalt do this, look at applying it, and you might not like it. It might restrict you. It might force you to do things you don't want to. So we're not doing things that don't link to, and we're not looking at things that don't link to our statutory role. And I would say to you that if you look at the Ministry for Environment toolkit and focus, I think we shared with you guys, urban panels have existed in the framework for a long time. We don't have them here. We haven't introduced them here. It doesn't mean that they aren't a tool you can use. So I think there's tools that you can use as levers to drive things that relate to legislation. And if this is something of interest, we can definitely have a broader conversation with you all about what those tools are. But I think saying is it a statutory requirement, yes or no, sometimes it's not black and white, it's more complex than that. And I think that's what I'm saying back to you. It's a tool in the kit.
Yeah, and I guess the question that needs some consideration from the table is whether we want to be leaders or followers. And I think sometimes it's really good to be a leader, and actually sometimes it's really good to sit back and follow in the footsteps. So just a question is on page 11, IZ is still emerging as a policy option in New Zealand while it's not widely implemented. It's not actually implemented anywhere, is it? If we go back to since 2003, Queensland Lake District have been tinkering around. 2016, Auckland Council have been tinkering around and pulled back from it. When was Wellington? Wellington 2021, coming up 5 years ago, have pulled back from it. So councils all around New Zealand have had a look at this and gone, oh my goodness, and no one's actually implemented it. That would be a concern.
I think I'm going to hand over to the team, but I'll cover the handover with this comment. I think we're exploring this with you today. I think hopefully what you're hearing from the team here is that what we already have learnt, because we aren't leading, because we're not doing it, is that those who have tried have found some difficulties because of the need really for a more collective response sitting behind it. So I will hand to Stephen because you're well in the detail of this.
Just in terms of some context, there was actually a piece of legislation that was passed by Helen Clark's government around inclusionary zoning. It was called the Enabling Territorial Local Authority Act. It was repealed by a subsequent National Party government. So there has been a national inclusionary zoning has been talked about a lot over the years as a tool, and did progress. And I'll just mention that one of the central things in that piece of legislation was to do a housing needs assessment and really understand the affordability issues in a given area before considering inclusionary zoning. But in terms of Queenstown, I think Queenstown is the example. And Queenstown, although it hasn't been able to progress its desire to have it included in the district plan, and that was challenged, they have actually been running a scheme where they negotiate with developers. And I mean, Queenstown Lake Council, the Housing Trust has received $25 million in land and cash contribution from developers over 15 years. So there has been an active scheme, but it hasn't been set in the context of the planning rules and the law. And I think that the issue is that when councils look at this, they are concerned by that lack of authority, I suppose, in terms of the regulatory. And I think it's about exploring ways that councils might get together to be able to work on that. I hope that helps.
Yeah, Queenstown Lakes appears to me to be a contributions arrangement or policy or setting as opposed to inclusionary zone. But anyway, lots of other questions. I'm not feeling it. I think we've got lots of tools in the toolbox. We've got district plan, we've got RMA, we've got Plantain Shoe, we've got NPS, we've got NDARS, we've got lots of stuff. And I think we should, I mean, this is going to cost. So that's just my feeling, but happy to hear other mutterings on it. Thank you. But appreciate your work. Thanks.
Thank you, Glenn. So now we move on to Simon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora tātou. Thanks very much for your efforts again. Look, interesting discovery. I think there's opening up a huge can of worms. I think investigating this is probably a good thing, just so that we actually understand the lie of the land, because we could actually discover things which are actually beneficial to us out of this. Especially, let's say, if we don't go holus bolus into this scheme, we still might understand how we can better work with developers to get the housing that we need in this area, like Queensland Lakes have done, which I think is a good thing. So I do support the research of this, personally. Questions that I have are things about cost and return on investment, looking at overseas models, because the countries you've shown are very big populations, and we don't. And I think, there's a whole lot of areas in this country, especially like transport, that we suffer by comparison because we have a small population. And have we taken that into consideration? What is the return on investment period? If these countries have implemented and had successful returns, how much investment over what period of time, and how will that be achieved to return on that investment? Things like output of qualities, with especially in Otaki, having some big developers come in, and there's been a lot of questioning about the output of the housing proposed, especially in fast track policies, and a lot of concerns about, yes, we can get low quality, low cost, but also potentially low quality output, which actually infects the environment, and there's a lot of concern around that sort of thing. One of the questions I had is, do we have a response to Quinton's email at this point in time? Putting you on the spot. If we don't, that's fine, because I'd like to understand how we'd address that email, because these are the concepts he's raised that I hadn't really thought about either.
I will start with that and then swing into some of the other points you made. So those comments were tabled today. We haven't seen that feedback. Thank you. And so we won't be making comment on that today operationally. Maybe the point I'll make to the questions you had, they're great ones. We haven't explored that because this is just early exploration. If we want to understand those things, we'd do more work. If there's no appetite to do that, then we won't. So that's a quid pro quo, I guess, is there's an opportunity to understand that, to see, to your point, I think you've said there's a continuum almost of how hard or fast you can go in there. And that's kind of what we're testing. I think Stephen very helpfully raised that this has been a hot topic, and it is legislatively, it is in the toolkit. It has come in and out. It may go back in. And so there's the opportunity to think about where we position on this, and if it goes back in, where our view is on it. If we don't do any more exploration, then if it comes back in, we wouldn't be in a position to provide any input or views on that, because we won't have done the work. So that's kind of what we're putting on the table. I'm not looking in tea leaves or trying to predict what will happen next year, but effectively it remains a hot topic.
Thanks. Yeah.
The team's noted down your points. If we do go any further, we'll make sure that we take those into account. At that point, we'd also be able to respond to Quintin's and anyone else's concerns, feedbacks, ideas.
That's great. Yeah, I think I've covered most of them, but I agree with you. I think we have to be, to have at least a point of view to come to the table with, rather than trail the 8 ball. I'd rather be a little bit ahead. So appreciate that.
Thank you, Christian. So saying, making the comment in relation to what the submission was, we all have it in front of us, and so you can consider, anyone can consider whether or not you want to actually add that option 4, or whether you not. Adding that option doesn't necessarily, well, it can provide some direction, but it's a bit different from what the, I suppose, yeah, then it ties into the recommendations about where we want to go on this as well. So,
if I may just note, we're really today, although there's a table in there that looks at what we've explored, we're not anticipating that those options are being approved for any point. So the recommendations in our paper today are to discuss and provide feedback. And I just want to be clear, obviously Councillor Cooper has given us feedback, Community Board Member Black has just given us feedback. So we're noting it all down so that we can get from this committee, also from the Social Sustainability Committee, a bit of an understanding of the opportunity or not, if that's the case. So then we can come back after that to go, right, this is where we think we're positioned and this is the next step or not. So I think the way that I would, looking at this feedback, as I would any wider feedback we receive from the community, is that it's just part of the input to, what are people saying, what are they thinking, what are the concerns, opportunities. So we would be also considering that as we move forward.
thank you. So now I move on to Glenn Olsen.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think this is a really important subject that needs to be have. I see the big focus on here is an affordability of the properties and stuff, but it's much bigger than that, because if I go back to when this discussion was happening in the UK in the early to mid 2000s, it wasn't about affordability of the house. It was actually more social aspect of the mixing of people and coming out of social experiments, I guess, which failed from the 80s, 70s, 80s, where they created these huge housing estates and moved everybody who can, so you ended up with classes of people living in this. And this is where it really came from there. It wasn't about, ensuring that there was cheaper houses mixed with the more expensive ones. It was about ensuring that sociality had this mix of people. So to me, this here again is just carry on the next experiment. So I still see this as an experiment, because no one knows what's going to happen, when they put people in there and they make these more socially affordable houses. You're going to move people in socially, which is a great thing to have this mix, but who knows what's going to happen over time, because it wasn't that long ago in the UK when they said, well, we'll build these estates, put them all there, it's a great way, the problem will go away. And in fact, they turned into huge nightmares for them. In fact, one of the biggest and most famous ones there, they bulldozed the whole place, and that was a massive town almost that was bulldozed from that. Yeah, and then this is where this discussion came on, which I remember really clearly. So I guess my first question I would ask is this also about the social experiment of how to mix the people better in the community, or are we just looking at affordability of the houses itself? Would be the first question I would have.
I do think it's important to recognise that we're not talking about mixing public housing and other forms of housing, because I sense from what you're raising. Okay. Right.
Because a lot of these places are not social houses, so people live in places which are not social houses, but they tend to.
Yep.
Cheaper places tend to be together.
And so, the types of models I've seen in the past are that you can't distinguish between the housing that's been delivered because it's affordable and the other housing in that development. So I suppose there is a philosophy behind that, but they're the kind of things that would need to be investigated and how the rules are put together, if you understand me. Yeah.
Yeah, I might just add, and I'll say it's anecdotal, because I'm not going to go, here's the evidence of it, but anecdotally, in talking with some developers and some other partners in our community, in a similar way to Queenstown, there are already discussions underway with developers about the opportunity to actually provide for a mix of housing. So to pretend that discussions don't happen, I think would be remiss of us. This isn't a new concept, and there are different views on it. And there are, I'm just going to say parties, so I don't say who they are. There are some parties who already negotiate with developers on this topic. So I'm just putting it out there. And I'm saying anecdotally because we wouldn't table it and it's not us, but I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're right. I mean, there's some really good developers out there who do this already, or are very open to this, and there's some who are not, and and that's where we are. I think the other things I've got here are questions I probably don't expect staff to answer now, but they're just more food for thought going forward. So yeah, I think some of the things you need to look to is one is like retirement villages. When are new retirement villages? How can you enforce them to do this? Because even if they create cheaper housing, there's these fees which the residents have to pay each month, and to maintain the properties and the facilities and stuff like that. So it'd be I would wonder how they could say, well, you need to do cheaper resident housing, but how can people still afford to stay in the estate, in these places, to pay it? Or do you say, well, if you're building this much for a new village of this size, we also expect you outside of it to build, social housing next to it. I mean, there's another way, but again, these are just, I don't expect answers. They're just food for thought. The other one is, and Simon did touch briefly on this, is there is a risk that when you do lower priced housing mixed in, that what that means is a lower grade of housing. So still to healthy standards, but a lower grade materials, which require more maintenance or don't have the same life, as the other stuff. So then, and this is where I said some of this can be this ongoing, where the social experiment is what happens over time? Do these places not get maintained to the same level? Do they get to a point in 20 years' time where these places are just, becoming leaky or whatever else because the materials are being used or they're colder, the flooring is worn out and stuff like that. So how do you enforce them to be maintained for 100 years or whatever? It's great for day one. And then when you do that, then you end up with real, issues as well. So that's another one. And I think the only other one, I've got a number here, but I'm not going to go into all of them. The other one is the developers, at the end of the day, they're going to do it because they want to make money, unless there's a real social one. And there are some social ones there that don't do it. But so what does this mean that if you're going to force them to put in affordable housing, is that housing going to be smaller? So is it going to be the right housing for, let's say, a family with 3 children, or is it just going to be single apartments? And, you know, maybe you can have 3 apartments where you would have 1 family, which makes it, you know, the same. But how, you know, does that mean that the people who need to be in there are going to be there? And also, is it that then that it's the developers are going to look at having less green space, less parking and stuff like that to pay for these, which again, then of course is going to have an environment impact because, you know, there is more issues of, you know, the environment of how it's going to be impacted, you know, water, waste and stuff like that. So I think they're not questions I want answered, but they're just things that I think need to be considered, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
So if I'll just add to that, I think there's also the thought that potentially if one of the sites, one of the sections is going to be, they're going to lose income on that, they may well increase the price of the other sections as well.
Yes, yeah.
So we have several people online, so I'll go to them first. So first of all, actually, unless you want to make any comments about the last...
Just to say, I think those are extremely valid things to have tabled. The point of bringing this here today was to really get into there could be environmental benefits or actually concerns that are raised through this. And one of the continued challenges we have, I think, in developments, particularly large developments that are coming through, is getting that balance right. And so I think what you've just put on the table is, will that come at a cost? And it may not be that the price for housing goes up. It might be that there's less green space or there's less whatever as a mechanism to reduce the implications in terms of financial viability of something. So definitely we've noted those down. Thank you.
So thank you. Yes, so we'll go online now to Councillor Hanford.
Hey, morning everyone. Apologies for not being there in person. You might be able to hear in my voice that I'm a little under the weather at the minute. So if I cough or whatever, I'll just quickly put myself on mute. But I just wanted to maybe provide a slightly different perspective, quite strongly in support of continuing to investigate and be quite heavily involved in research around how this could look at a regional or national level. I think there's obviously a reason why it was identified in our housing strategy as being something worth exploring, and so I think to honour it as an important piece in that puzzle is quite important. And I also think, engaging in the Wellington Regional Leadership Committee inclusionary zoning workstream makes sense if there's the opportunity for us to be involved and engaged in that. I think better to be kind of in the tent so that we're understanding all of the concerns and also the opportunities that are present in incorporating inclusionary zoning into how we move forward. Better to be, for the sake of continued research and understanding, to even be involved in those conversations. So I definitely don't think we want to shut down opportunities to keep kind of being involved. And I also feel that now is the time to be involved in these conversations. Like you said, Chris, considering we're a high growth node in the region and in the growth framework, but also because, we're already seeing kind of big developments coming on stream now. So it kind of feels like, and that's only going to ramp up. So it feels like if we don't have the conversation now and we try and have it, say, in like 10 years down the track, we will have missed this opportunity right here, right now, when we're in the midst of a lot of development. So it kind of makes sense, in my view, to start engaging regionally now. And also, the last point I would make is alignment to Vision Carpety. Like, it would be quite interesting if there was some analysis done as to what inclusionary zoning could provide that people have asked for through Vision Carpety in terms of our long-term vision out to 2060, and also how this intersects with the master planning piece as well. I'm keen for us to keep that in mind. But sorry, no questions, but I just wanted to, in response to some of the prompts that you put forward about where we might take this next, I just wanted to provide that voice of strong support for continuing this research, and just thank you all for this bit of work, Jason, as you said, that has involved so many different people across the organisation, which is cool as well. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. So now we'll go to Kim. Thank you, Kim.
Kia ora. Yeah, no, I'm kind of on the same line as Sophie. I don't think we have enough information to not have the discussion. And just a couple of things in terms of when we have these discussions, there seems to be an assumption that if we don't let developers do what they want, and there are rules around what they can do, right? So they can't come in and do whatever they want. So there's rules around there, that no one's going to build houses. So for as long as I've been in that space, as long as there is green space or land, there will be developers. You're not going to get one developer leaves, another developer will replace them. And that's been, that's historically you see that. So we need to not be afraid of losing a developer, because knocking at our door is going to be another one. For me, it's about putting a stake in the ground about what we want to see in Kapiti and how we want to live. Because once those developments get the green light, there is literally nothing you can do. So you need to have that conversation up front. And like I said, if it comes to the point where a developer says, look, it's just too difficult, I'm not going to develop there, then what will naturally happen is they will sell it and someone else will come along. And potentially you get one that comes along that says, actually, I like what you're doing and I'm willing to do that. There's heaps of issues around this, and it's complex as. So, this doesn't mean that our consenting issues are going to go away. There's heaps of economic things that might come up out of this, because logically speaking, you go, well, if it costs me more to build that house, then I'm going to put these other sections up. All of that stuff comes into play, but that shouldn't make us scared to have the conversation. The couple of things that I would say is that there needs to be probably clarity, and I'm assuming this will happen when we get into it, around what affordable housing is, because it's not created equal for all. The definition of affordable housing, people often jump straight to social housing, kaingoora housing. We need to be clear on what affordable housing is and what that means and how that works, which is why I'm for having the discussion. And I just wonder, and I don't know because I don't have enough information around the inclusionary zoning and what we can put in there, or how broad that can go, to actually start to ensure there are some environmental benefits, being proactive about putting things in place that ensure environmental benefits, rather than just hoping that they come because we put something else. So looking at it from a holistic point of view and saying, what are the things that we can do that actually helps a lot of things and get some broader outcomes just from this one conversation. But I do support the conversation happening. I think we don't need to be afraid that we're going to lose all developers. So I don't ever see that happening. But hey, I could be wrong, but unless I've got evidence in front of me to prove otherwise. So that's all my comments. But yeah, just that, my question, there was a question in there. Do we have like a definition of affordable housing, or are we working through that?
I'm just going to note, because this is in the inclusionary zoning context, I think what I heard you suggest, Kim, is there's plenty of definitions. I know that we've talked about, and I know Stephen will talk about this, the formal definition, which gets into the percentage of your income, etc. We're not going to give that back to you. I think we're going to take that away in the context of inclusionary housing, really give that point consideration so that we can come back and be clear on the response that we'd provide.
Thank you, Kim. So I'm just noting it's 20 to 12. We haven't had a break yet, and we have another major update after this one. So what I'm going to do is just ask that people are very succinct in their comments and their questions, and that if you've already had a turn, I'm going to say no. Okay, But at the end of this, we do need to get to a point about what direction we want to provide to staff. So I will now go to Christian. Thank you.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you, Madam Chair. I won't call you comrade, Madam Chair. So just on some of the things and my main points here is that housing access is actually absolutely a priority for this council and is indeed one of the top 10 priorities as published by council. The definition of affordable housing as published by KCDC is options equate to 30% of the average salary in the Kapiti community. That's rounded to about 60,000. So you've got looking at affordable housing starting at around 400,000, depends on household income, and it could go up from there, clearly. The private sector provision, in defence of developers, it's not their job to provide cheap housing, it's their job to maximise their profits. Like it or not, that's just the truth. So unless there's measures to affect the building and the provision of affordable housing, the market is never going to provide it because the market's not responsible for providing it. So I would support this council working out for itself how that can be affected in our district as part of a larger directive from regional council or government at a national level. Also noting that there is not a chance at all that a national-led government will ever do this because they throw money towards tax cuts for landlords and have frozen the provision of social housing. It's just what they do. And the number one sector for political donations is the property sector, and they go to National Act and New Zealand First. So they're just facts. It's not conjecture, it's just how it is. So if we want to have key workers living in our community and servicing our community, they need somewhere affordable to live. If we want our children to stay in our community, and therefore, and I would hope that we would aspire for them to be able to build houses, work in our community, live here, support us, to be around for us, they need affordable housing. Otherwise, like tens of thousands, or well over 100,000 now that have already left, they will leave. There's no way in the current structure of our society that my soon-to-be university-educated children in professionals who will have had all the advantages. Where are they going to get? Where are they going to get a decent job in New Zealand, particularly in the sciences, where it's going to pay enough for them to have an affordable home? And it's Australia or Europe. It's not here. And this is a problem we need to solve as a community if we want to have that sort of thing here. If we want people to stay, and I'm being selfish mentioning my children, but hey, maybe others have children and grandchildren and aspire for those things too. That's it from me.
Thank you, Christian. Councillor Warwick.
Mine are quick and you can come back to this. You said you've talked to developers. Can we hear some of that feedback? You don't have to answer that now. But the other thing is, what development, part of the conversation is that this would be development contributions, which at present go to other things for the community. How can you bring back to us how that will affect other things that development contributions go towards?
Right. Just to clarify, it's got nothing to do with development contributions. It's got nothing to do with rates. So it's not about money coming back to council. And so it's actually about what I'm going to, and that's why I link it back to master planning, what it is we are, well, what's coming into our community, how we grow. And if I said to you, and that's why I go back to the Urban Development Act, we're required to grow. We're going to grow because we've been told to nationally. It's about how we grow and whether we want to think about, I think some really good points were put on the table around actually people may lean into this, but it might have impacts for the environment. And whilst there are some protections, how that balances through would be interesting to understand. And secondly to that, currently, there is no requirement. We're just trying to push together a few topics: the environment, housing, affordability. To go, we need to look at this as a whole. Because yes, you're right. Building houses is building houses. There's some standards that need to be met, and otherwise, there will not necessarily be provision for affordability. We're not suggesting through this conversation that we are unduly putting requirements in. I think we're just exploring how do these things fit together, and is that going to help us grow in the way that we want to in Kapiti? And by looking at it, maybe that we do. So it's just we're looking. We're not suggesting anything at this stage, but there's some different tensions, and it's not clear to us that we understand how they're fitting together at the moment, and that's possibly the value of exploring this further.
And so in some of that, I think it's Queenstown have developed, in lieu of development contributions, as part of the program. So if that is going to be part of what happens here in the discussion, how would that affect what development contributions go towards now, is my question.
So I think the reason I'm saying it to you this way, Council has a development contributions policy. We have a remissions policy. If you decided that you wanted to build that into those policies, that would be a conversation we have with you. Looking at inclusionary zoning, there's almost like a continuum of how you might decide you want to lean into it. It does not automatically mean that that is what you have to do. So we're at the beginning of the conversation. I think our next steps would be starting to outline that continuum and what your options are and what you get for it. But it also, just remember, with all due respect, yes, there is a social side to it. Yes, there is housing. Yes, there is affordability. But there's also the other side of it, of land use, greener spaces, everything we're trying to do here and how we're fitting that together. And that's, I think, what we're looking at with you. This might be a tool we go, not for us, thanks very much, moving on. It may also be, and I hear the point about different governments have different leanings that they go into. We've had a government who put in legislation that we're doing it. We had another government say, no, we're not. It's just an opportunity for us to explore it so that we have a view on what we think it means for us here. And given that we've heard from our community through Vision Kapiti, to understand whether it's a tool we need to help move forward. And that is part of master planning. And that's part of what we'd committed to coming back to you to talk about.
Okay. And if the Wellington Regional Leadership Committee commits to this, does that oblige us to do it? Is that no?
The short answer to that is no. We got asked to sit on the housing project as a lead because we have so much growth here. This is a topic that potentially could be in that. And so we wanted to understand the appetite here of what it's just exploring, it's not doing. And I just want to say, with all due respect, I think we've sat through this triennium a few plan changes. Even developing the future development strategy took something like 2 years. These are not fast burning things, they are slow. And so we're at the beginning of what might be a 3-year conversation. So it's not like next week someone's going to have something for you to approve to put in place by the end of September. This is just having a look at what's coming, where we're heading, and whether as we change our settings, this is something we do want in our toolkit, whether it's us, regionally or nationally, that we'd want to advocate for or not, because that's where we're at.
And just an aside, and not for this conversation, but in the report it mentions the Better Off funding, and I don't know, have we had a feedback on who got that and what it was for? And
we have.
Oh,
we can circulate that round offline.
Yeah.
So, Simon, have you spoken already?
I have. It's just 10 seconds.
Okay.
Another comparison when we're looking at overseas models, probably building regulations as well, because our standard of building regulations is going up so much that there is no such thing as affordable housing unless it's unconsented work now, in my opinion. So what is affordable housing? What does an affordable house look like? I think that's what we need to define as well. Thank you.
Right, thank you, everyone. So I just want to make a quick comment, or a couple of comments. So we have a couple of recommendations on the table. What I'm generally hearing is that we are involved in this discussion going forward. I would actually like to make the comment that I think that when our mayor represents us, we know we have a really good plan going forward about what we know our mayor is going to put forward on our behalf. I think that is critical. I also just want to make a comment about what Kim said in terms of there are rules. Yes, we do have rules, but I think some of those rules can be changed and tweaked to improve and, in fact, protect some of the issues that we have raised today. And I think some of those plan change rules need to be really brought to the front so that we're not leaving it up to developers to make decisions that we don't necessarily ultimately want. So, based on this, we'll just now look at the recommendations.
Can you just resolve to continue past 2 hours?
Yes, yes, okay, so we've gone way past 2 hours without a break. So would someone like to move that we resolve to continue the meeting? Thank you, Councillor Warwick and Councillor Black seconding that. Okay, so looking at our recommendations, based on what I'm hearing, is there, well, maybe I'll just put it to the vote. Okay?
Move debate.
Yes, we can. So first of all, can I have a mover for the recommendations, please? Okay, thank you, Councillor Warwick. Seconder? Thank you, Glenn. So, debate. Glenn.
Yes, hi, thank you. I'm just looking at the recommendations specifically and not about the body of work. Discuss and provide direction or support for council taking a lead role. And I've got two issues with the recommendation. Taking a lead role indicates that we are actually going to lead this body of work. And whilst I'm reasonably comfortable, because we're in the early days of exploration and gathering evidence, finding and listening, and my concern is that we shouldn't be leading it. As I said in my question time, sometimes it's good to lead and charge out in front and follow me, and other times it's good just to sit back in the pocket and listen and learn and understand the consequences, unintended consequences. Did you like that? Like that little shout out? I did. So I don't like the recommendation. I don't like, from what I've seen of it so far, with an open mind, I don't like inclusionary zoning, but that's okay. It's about the recommendation. Because I don't think we should be a lead role in it. And then if you work through the recommendation, through collaboration with Wellington Regional Leadership Committee, while remaining open to alternative options if the regional efforts stall. That sort of indicates to me that we're in this come hell or high water. We've heard that this should be a regional thing or a national thing. It doesn't fly by itself or hasn't anywhere in New Zealand. But I'm just concerned in the recommendation that we're giving a signal to council staff that you're going to run this, you're going to be driving this, and if it all fails at regional level, we're still going to continue and we're still going to do stuff even though it's failed at regional level. And that's my concern. So I'm just signalling that unless I hear something else in debate that changes my mind, with my open mind, we can either take that we're taking A1, A2 together.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
But so the other suggestion, Councillor Cooper, is that you amend A2.
Yeah.
And if you put that on the table, you'll find out whether or not you'll get a seconder or not.
Yeah. I can read the room. I think. I'm probably, as I often do, someone gets the current a little bit, which is okay. I will open them up if anyone else wants to amend it and take lead out and sort of amend it to participate. I'd be more than welcome to second it. That's probably a more appropriate way as opposed to me sticking my neck out. Well, I'm signaling to the room that I'm happy to second it. If the will in the room isn't having got a seconder, then that speaks for itself. Okay. Can we look at amending, please? Can I make an amendment? Is it the appropriate time?
So if we can quickly get some words, yes, or
I'm happy for potentially. Can we? I'm happy to have direction around that from staff. Around amending the lead role to a participant role.
can we have that on screen, please, if possible? So like even taking out, taking a lead role.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Sorry, I'm not a committee member, but we can't have a seconder of an amendment who was the original mover of the motion.
Yep, fair point.
You moved the original one.
Yeah, which was my okay. I'll just leave it at.
Well, actually, no. So is anyone else willing to second it?
Well, somebody have to move in.
Yes, Simon.
Look, I would like to question what leadership, the cost of leadership is, because I do support Coops on that one. I want to understand what leadership means before we actually support it. I definitely think we need to be a participant in it. And we can actually look at being a leader later if required. So I'll second that.
Great. So, sorry for throwing that.
No, that's okay. Did you want us to suggest something?
Yes, please. Yeah, I'm happy for direction.
I think what I heard was discuss and provide direction and or support for council taking a lead role in exploring.
No, I don't think we should be taking a lead role because it indicates that we will be leading it at that WRLC. I don't think we should be lead role. I think we should participate in the development.
The challenge is that we've been asked to lead the housing project within which this sits.
If I can suggest, maybe we just take a 5-minute break.
Yeah.
So we can actually work on this offline. And if some people, yeah.
I'll take my.
Are we off?